Hello, everyone. Welcome to the award-winning To Hull and Back podcast, sponsored by Old's Logical Bar and Kingfisher in Hull. I'm your host, Nathaniel, and tonight we're joined by a Southampton fan, Martin. So, Martin, thanks for coming on. How are you this evening?
Yeah, I'm glad the international break is nearly over.
Yeah.
It's wet and windy down here on the south coast. It's very wet and windy.
Yes, it's
hopefully
Storm,
it's a bit better.
Storm Babbitt or something?
Yeah, it's pretty
I think
windy.
that's what it's
Hopefully it
called.
settles down in time for the weekend's fixture.
Well, yes, absolutely. I mean, of course, Southampton have actually been on the unlucky end of a very windy goal up at Stoke with Begovic. Is that right? Years ago.
Yeah,
That's a big throwback.
Well, funny enough, I work with Asmir Begovic. He's a friend of mine, so we speak about it regularly. But yeah, Asmir on a windy day in Stoke took an early kick upfield and got caught in the wind and dropped over our goalkeeper, Mark Boric. I don't think Asmir knew what to do, but it's in the Guinness World Records for the level of goal scored. So he done very, very well that day.
Yeah, great.
Hopefully no repeat to that at the weekend.
No, well, Old Sop, our goalkeeper, he's known for his good distribution and kicking the ball really long. So if anyone's going to do it with a storm like this, then if it was a midweek game, perhaps you'd be in trouble. But I think by the weekend, that'll probably be okay. So usually, as we are, we're not really that far into the season, just 11 games. I do like to ask what happened last season. So generally, Southampton, 20th last year, what went wrong?
Oh, everything. Where do you start? It was a disaster. The football club was taken over by a company called Sport Republic. So the ownership group took a massive change in December. This was of the season before we got relegated. So it was Sport Republic's first ever season in charge last year in the Premier League. They made some fairly big changes to the playing personnel. They brought a lot of players in. They sacked all of Ralph Hasenhüttl's backroom staff. He looked quite unsettled from an early part of the season, and results didn't go great. In the minute it got a little bit tough, Sport Republic wanted to bring their man in. That was Nathan Jones. We all know what happened there. It didn't work out. Just was a wrong time to bring him in as a manager. We needed experience. We didn't have it. And things went from bad to worse. And instead of appointing a proper manager when they relieved Nathan of his duties in January, they should have, I think it's end of January, they should have brought in a proven manager with around 16 games to go and give ourselves a chance. We didn't do that. We brought in a gentleman called Ruben Sellers, who was the assistant manager, and he failed miserably. And we were relegated with a very young side of players that just didn't have enough leadership. And we were rock bottom for a reason.
Yeah. So was it mainly the ownership's sort of problem? Because I thought, even though maybe Southampton weren't doing that well, Hasenhüttl had always managed to keep you up. So sticking with him should have been, at least in that transition period with an ownership, that could have perhaps been a mistake.
It was a must probably to keep Ralph. There was a lot of fans turning on him at the end of his reign as manager. He was one of the longest serving managers in the club's history, been there a long period of time. They spent a lot of money last summer. Southampton did, probably the most they'd ever spent in a transfer window. The problem was the recruitment wasn't great. It was a lot of young players, up and coming Manchester City academy graduates that they were hoping that were going to take the step up, and they were all thrown into the first team without enough leaders. And that was the biggest problem. We sold probably our best leader in a guy called Oriol Romeu, who's actually now moved on to Barcelona. And he was an outstanding player. We just missed leadership. And it's still something we're actually missing now, even down in the Sky Bet Championship. We do miss leaders in the side, and that has probably been a bit of the problem this year as well.
Yeah. So compared to the other two relegated teams, Leeds and Leicester, who've been able to sell a lot of players, I think why I thought Southampton could perhaps do the best out of those three was, I mean, no offence, although sort of offence, Southampton was so bad last year that you didn't have that many good players to sell. And that means that these young players could adapt well to the Championship together this season. So is that the case? Do you agree with that?
No, we had a couple of real top talents. Obviously, in Ward Prowse, who's gone on to West Ham. The biggest loss was Romeo Lavia. He was a midfielder, brilliant player. He was everything good that we had last season, or anything good would come through Lavia. He was a brilliant player, really good midfielder. And then there was a lot of squad players that weren't quite good enough. They've all gone now. So all the deadwood's kind of been moved on. I think Ward-Prowse and obviously Lavia were the biggest miss. You were never going to keep those two. But I think the one player we all wanted to keep that was a real talent in the Championship last season, you would have seen him, and that was Nathan Teller, who was at Burnley. He was a Southampton player. We sent him out on loan to develop. He blossomed at Burnley under a really good manager. And he come back and we were like, oh, he's the golden ticket. He could score us a load of goals. And unfortunately, the football club decided to sell him. He went to Bayer Leverkusen and he was a massive loss because in those opening 3 or 4 games, he was outstanding for Southampton. He looked a real thorn in anyone's side. He was creating chances and we miss him dreadfully. So we've kept a few players that I didn't think we were going to keep. We can come on to that, but losing Teller was huge.
Yeah, I'd agree with that because, I mean, he scored a hat-trick against us last season. I think he scored an awful lot, 17 or something. And I guess perhaps if he has gone to Bayer Leverkusen, perhaps he didn't want to stay in the Championship. But I was surprised he didn't immediately go to Burnley as well because he looked like a very good player. So thoughts on the new management? Because Russell Martin, I mean, I can understand why Southampton have gone for him because of the style of play. And I think at this level with the players you've got, you can, pass through teams. But he's not really succeeded at MK Dons or Swansea. So what's the thought process there?
It's an interesting one. Obviously, it's a total change for us as a football club and in the way we play football because we've been used to a high press. We've had certainly under Ralph, who was the manager for a long period of time, we played a lot of high press football. Pochettino before that, Ronald Koeman, all played high press. You'd have hard working sides that would push up the field and go after. They weren't really possession-based sides, not really. Wouldn't play out from the back, but would play with high energy. Nathan Jones sits in the middle. He wanted to play long ball, play with a big striker. So that was a massive change. Ruben Sellers wanted to pick up where Ralph had left off. So this is a massive change for the personnel that are left and actually for the supporters as well that haven't bought into it. The supporters, not all of them, they don't like the possession-based football. Get it forwards, they don't want to see it passed around the back ball. They don't like it. They don't enjoy it. I'll be honest, as a fan, do I enjoy it? No, I don't. I like the mix that Ipswich bring, where they play possession-based, but they play it fast, quick, furious, and they go after teams. They play people that want to run at defenders, and they move the ball a lot quicker. We're a little bit slow with it. It's just not settled. I don't think we had the personnel to play the style he wants to play. And I still don't think he has the personnel, even with the transfer window that he had. He just doesn't have the players to do what he actually wants to do. So there's a big onus on the ownership group trying to bring him in a bit more in January to get him to where he wants to be. But football's very impatient, isn't it? It's an impatient business.
Yeah, we're having a lot of the same issues. Harry's commented here, interesting to know if Southampton or perhaps we should change their tactics because I think if you look at I think Southampton have had the most attempted passes in the league and we've had like the 4th most. So it's definitely going to be one of those tight games. We had a tight game against Leeds and then also Leicester not conceded to either of those sort of passing teams. So I think it could be kind of a slow match. But I was going to ask about whether Nathan Collins was just a long ball sort of merchant because I remember Match of the Day, they were complaining about that months ago and it didn't quite work. So yeah, I'm not sure about Russell Martin. I always have this thing that sometimes Swansea's philosophy is to pass the ball round. But that only really worked about 10 years ago and they've sort of since been getting managers that do that, but perhaps not as well. So I think that's why they chose Russell Martin and that's probably why Southampton chose him too, but I'm not sure if that's really going to work out.
He's not been brought in because he was a results-driven manager. If you really want promotion, what was I gone? I would have probably gone over someone that knew the league, but knew how to get teams back up. If you're really serious about going back up, he's been brought in for a brand of football that they want to change the whole football club, the way they go about playing football. Will it work when you instantly want to go back up? You've got parachute payments for a year. They're going to disappear after this year. So if you don't go back up, there's all sorts of trouble ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think Southampton, perhaps because it is quite a young team, I'm surprised that you've had a poor start, but you could work on it. Paul here commenting, surely you've got to give him time, Russell Martin, like we have with Senior, because implementing that different things. So do you think at this stage, are you willing to give him that time, or are you a fan
as a fan personally, as a podcaster and the fan, I speak to loads of different podcasts about it. I think you have to be patient. I know there's no patience in football, but you can't keep firing managers. They've decided the route they want to go down, and we just have to see if it works. Do I think it'll work? No, I don't. Do I think he's got the personnel? No, I don't. Do I think the fans will stick with it? No, they're not already. The result against Rotherham, there was boos at the end. The fan base is very split on the manager. They don't think that, like what you've said at the top of the show here about what he'd done at MK Dons and also what he'd done at Swansea. He's not got a side promoted, and that's what Southampton want. You know, they want the ownership group come out at the end of last season when they're relegated from the Premier League, and they said the ambition this season was to win the division, but to get promoted back to the Premier League. So the expectations of the fans are going to mirror what the ownership say. And that's what they want. And when results are not going right, and the transfer window saw a lot of loans bought in, there was a lot of players sold. It was 158 million raised, but there wasn't loads spent. And we bought a striker in Ross Stewart that's not kicked a ball yet. He's injured. Whether he'll be available for the weekend, we don't know. But we're struggling in the striker department and have done for a long time. So you've got to remain patient, but let's be realistic. Football fans are not, and I can see it already. I can see too many murmurings when I'm inside St Mary's at the moment.
Yeah, Paul here commenting again. Do you think expectations are too high? I think you've just answered that. If the ownership has been sort of saying they're going to win the league, our ownership's ambitious as well, but they've not said promotion. Well, playoffs is the aim, but it's not like winning the league. Playoffs is the aim for about 12, 16 teams in the league, or more than that. So that's fairly reasonable. So you mentioned there you've brought in Ross Stewart, but I'd like to talk about more the players Southampton were able to keep, because I think perhaps not quite to the level of Leeds or Leicester, but it's a very strong team. Two good scorers at this level in Armstrong and Che Adams. So how important is it to have those two?
Well, I think obviously Che Adams was heavily linked with a move away in the previous 3 transfer windows that we've had at the football club.
Maybe to Everton?
Everton were heavily linked with him. Wolves, deadline day move was on to Wolves. He was going to Wolves on deadline day, and the plug was pulled on him at the very last minute. He was desperate for a move out of the football club. You would think he was offered a contract extension in the summer. He played well at the start of the season. He's not signed that contract extension because I believe he probably does want to go and play Premier League football. He's a player that should score a ton of goals in this division. He scored like 20 plus goals last time he was in the division with Birmingham. So he's a goal scorer of this division, and he started really strong. The transfer window slammed shut. Russell Martin's left him out of a side because he didn't think he was in a mentally right place to play. He's not started a game until the Rotherham game, and he struggled. He didn't look like a player that was particularly happy. He didn't look like a player that was going to score, to be honest. On the other hand, Adam Armstrong scoring goals, but he's not playing in the 9 position. He's not playing in the striker position. So the two of them should score a lot of goals. Will they? I think Adam Armstrong will, but Che Adams I don't think will even feature in the starting lineup against Hull at the weekend. I wouldn't have thought.
And then the other Armstrong you've got is started to take free kicks instead of Ward-Prowse, Stewart. Yeah. So how impressed have you been with him?
Stewart's been good. He's a player we probably didn't expect to keep. He was linked with a deadline day move to Fulham. I think that was almost a done deal. It didn't happen for whatever reason, and he remained at the football club. I think he was a player probably at the end of last season. There's no... The manager's come out and said it. He was probably a player that wanted to leave. He's managed to persuade him to stay, Russell Martin, and he started to get him in the side a bit now, and he's playing him in a position that we've not really seen him, and that's more in the central midfield area, and it suits him. He's played out wide a lot. but he's a player that likes to keep the ball. We're lucky to have him in our side, and that free kick up at Stoke was brilliant. He took it really, really well, and he ran straight to the manager, so you could see he's got a rapport with the manager. And he's an important player for Southampton. You know, he's been away on international duty with Scotland, who have just qualified for the Euros, so he'll come back pretty buoyant, I would expect.
So yeah, I think this season, more than any time I can remember, the three relegated teams look very strong. But so far, Southampton have been a little bit inconsistent, a bit like us, really. I think we're 9th and you're 10th. I mean, of course, that's like 2 points off 4th and 2 points off maybe 20th or something like that. So basically, everyone is in the same spot except like Leicester and Sheffield Wednesday at the bottom. Like, how do you go from losing 5-0 to Sunderland and then beating Leeds? How does that work?
Yeah, it was a horrific time, actually. If you go back to the Sunderland game and to shed the 5 goals, I think it's not spoke about a lot, but the damage that was done when that 4th and 5th goal went in at the Stadium of Light was huge, because we then go into an international break, which you don't want. Sometimes if you're playing well, you don't want an international break because you want momentum. If you look at Spurs in the Premier League at the moment, they got momentum. They didn't want the international break to come. Like at that time, we didn't want it to come because we'd just been thumped, and you want to try and rectify it as quick as you possibly can. We lose a lot of players. We come home and we play Leicester City side, who are in form, where they'd not really been clinical till that stage, and they absolutely ripped us to bits. They scored inside the first 22 seconds at St Mary's. They were 2-0 up inside 15, 20 minutes, and they absolutely tore us to bits that night. And the manner of those 2 defeats was massively alarming. I walked out of St Mary's on that Friday night against Leicester City. It was a warm Friday night in St Mary's. I remember it well. And there was fans calling for the manager's head that night, which was unbelievable. And then we host an inform Ipswich. We lose 1-0. And then the biggest defeat, really, out of all of those, you look at the big defeat against Sunderland. No one talks about it. We went to Middlesbrough, who had not won a game, and got beaten quite convincingly. So those 4 defeats are huge. You know, the damage that's caused in that period of time. So to turn it around against Leeds was a big shock, but that was down to the change in personnel and what he'd done and the way he set up. So instead of playing inverted fullbacks, he totally changed things. He sat in with a flat back 4, so he didn't allow his fullbacks to come inside so much. But he played a false 9. Didn't play Shay Adams or Adam Armstrong through the middle. He played a lad called Charlie Alcaraz in a false 9, and he's a good player. He's an Argentinian international. He brought in a lad called Kamaldeen Silamana, who's a winger, a pacey winger. He put him in the side. He's a real threat, to be fair. He plays on the left side, and he's a danger man. So he mixed it up, and we caught Leeds off guard that day, and that's what it was really. We just caught them off guard. So they just didn't get off the coach.
But what was the problem though? Or what's the issue if Russell Martin's changed the system and now you're winning? Nothing to worry about. Has he changed it around perhaps?
He changed it around, and obviously he did the same at Stoke. We got a pretty doggy win up at Stoke, but it wasn't convincing by any stretch of the imagination. We still look vulnerable.
Midweek game away at Stoke. Was it even a rainy Tuesday?
It was a warm Tuesday night. It was a warm Tuesday night, still quite mild, and to go there and get a result, I was surprised at. But they've been out of form. If you look at it, Stoke were
we beat them.
Blighted with injuries. A lot of young players on the bench, players making debuts. It was always going to be a tough game, but not as tough as what it would have been in previous years. So on paper, you think you've got to win it, but then you play Rotherham at home. He sticks with the same team, same formation. I think he brought Shay Adams in actually for the Rotherham game, but Rotherham come to St Mary's again, blighted by injuries. Their fans were dreading the fixture, and we started the game like a train. We were really good, created a lot of chances, but didn't take the chances. But as the game went, it became a little bit slipped back into old habits. Get back to this slow, inconsistent passing between the back 4. The fans become irritated. They sit a bit deeper. They respected Southampton way too much for the first 45 minutes. It was like men against boys, and Premier League against League Two. It was like that. It was such a gulf between the two sides. But second half, they didn't respect Southampton as much. I thought, well, hold on a minute. they're not that good. We can get something here. And they snatched a point. And really and truly, it wasn't deserved, but we just didn't take our chances. So we slipped back into some old habits, and fans booing the players off. There was a lot of bad feeling in and around a little bit of the supporters group at the end. And, it's a lot of questions that started to be asked again. If people say, well, you can't beat Rotherham, you're never getting promotion. And probably right, to be honest.
That just sounds exactly like what's happening with us, to be honest. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but if it was anything other than 1-1 on Saturday, I'd be shocked because
I'm very much with you, yeah.
Yeah, we've drawn the last 4 home games. It seems that this passing style probably works better away from home when teams attack us a bit more. We can counter, because the amount of goals we've scored from actually doing a nice passing move from the back hasn't been as many times as we've just lumped it forward and then scored on the counter attack. So I feel like we can't really do that at home as much. So every week
for Southampton, pretty much the same actually.
Yeah. Every week I do a combined lineup of the teams. I haven't created it yet. I was hoping to get some insight from you. So who would you say are sort of maybe 4 or 5 Southampton players that, are the best in their position that you'd choose every week?
Carl Walker-Peters is a right back. He's the number 1 right back. He's probably one of the best right backs in the division. He's an outstanding player. We're lucky to have him at the football club, and we need to enjoy him while we can, because if we're not in a playoff position come Christmas, he'll probably leave, you would think. We need to be in with a shout going out for him to stay. The back 4, Ryan Manning sits in at left back. There's no one else to really play left back. Ryan Manning will play left back. He's one of Russell Martin's men. He's not been outstanding by any stretch of the imagination, but he will play Saturday. The goalkeeper, Bazunu, he will play. He's his first play. He won't change goalkeeper. The centre-back pairing, Jan Bednarek will start, the Polish international. He will be... We're short of centre-back at the moment. Taylor Hayward-Bellis and him and Bednarek had formed a good partnership. Taylor Hayward-Bellis has come back from England under 21 duty injured. So what does he do at centre-back? It's a big call for Russell Martin, because Shay Charles has played there a bit, a young midfielder who can play centre-half, but he's lost confidence. He was involved in the heavy defeats against Leicester and Sunderland. So, and you've also got Mason Holgate, who's on loan from Everton. He could potentially come in. I would think Mason Holgate would probably come in at centre-back. Remains to be seen. Again, he's been involved in a couple of these drubbings. Struggled to settle in a Southampton shirt. And then the midfield will probably be as it has been in the previous games. I would think that Will Smallbone would definitely start if he's fit and available. He's played in midfield. Flynn Downs, he's on loan from West Ham. He'll start. And then it's who he uses in the wide position. Silamana has been playing. Samuel Dozie was good early part of the season. He's not featured last couple of weeks, so I don't expect to see him. Adam Armstrong will be on the team sheet, but he'll play in a midfield role, in behind a front man. And it's just who those kind of front 1 or 2 are going to be. Who's going to play in the 9.5? I would like to see Charlie Alcaraz, but he's away for Argentina. Will he be back in time, and will he have jet lag? I would expect him not to start the weekend. So it's who he plays up front. It will be very interesting. But that's kind of an idea on the lineup that you'll see, really.
Yeah.
But there's nailed on 5 players that start there. Probably be 7.
Yeah. So I think if I do the lineup, both Armstrongs have to be in
Both
there.
Armstrongs will play, yeah.
And then Walker-Peters, Downs and Bednarek come in. Because at the moment, I don't think City are in the best form, but then I also don't know if I can justify putting in more Southampton players, because you're so far below us by probably, 1 goal difference?
Yeah. There's a lot of players
clearly
out
much
of form.
better.
Yeah, there's a lot of players with us out of form. If you look back into who could you pull out and say who's been the best player this season, you find it really difficult. There's only 2 players you say that'll walk out of it and say, do you know what, they've been really good. But even then, they've not been quite superstar, not been like outstanding.
Yeah, fair enough. So, we've touched on it, but, firstly, you don't have to, but do you have any thoughts on Hull City and where perhaps you predicted
I think it's a really tough game. Yeah, I think they're a tough game. I've watched a lot of Hull's games. I'm interested at Liam Rossini because he tried to do what Russell Martin's doing. So I followed Hull closely. Obviously, I'm friends with Ant as well. So I'm always looking. You look at people and you look at their teams and how they're doing. And I obviously watched your game against Leicester. I thought they were superb, defended really well, really hard to break down. I think you'll give us hell of a game at the weekend. I think it'd be hard for us to break you down. I think coming back off of an international break to travel to Hull, even though it's Saturday, there's a lot of players coming back from international duty at the next couple of days. I think probably tomorrow will be that first training session back together. Friday, you're probably traveling, so there's not a lot of preparation time. I think it's a nightmare first game for us back from an international break, and I'm not looking forward to it at all. I think if we can walk out of there with a point at the weekend, I'll be really chuffed.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it'll probably be 1-1. We have had a few international players. Both Delap and Philogene scored for the young England under-21s, so it's nice to see that.
Philogene's a great player, isn't he, by the way?
Oh,
what a great
talent.
I
mean, he just stands out like a sore thumb because, I mean, we do have a lot of good players, but he's just so good. And, I mean, I think we are probably slightly better than last year because we probably got about the same quality of players, really, except, last year we didn't really ever have two good wingers. But this season we've got definitely at least one, and then someone just fills in and can be average on the other wing, and that's why we're better. But Philogene, he's definitely the player to look out for. So I have to predict 1-1 because it's been the result most times we played at home, not just this season, but we always find it difficult to break teams down. So we had a lot of 1-1s. I know senior last year. So are you going to go for exactly the same?
I'm going with a draw. I'm going to go with 2-2 though. I think it will be a draw. I just think we are so leaky. We are vulnerable at the back. We've cut the mistakes out in recent games, but we can score goals, but we definitely let goals in. So I'm going to go with 4 goals in the game, 2-2.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at that. That was our last result, 2-2. So thanks, Martin, for coming on.
You're welcome.
Do you have anything to plug at the end of the episode?
Yeah, I do. Anybody that wants any Southampton related content, at Football Martin _ on YouTube, TikTok as well. I'm always doing roundup of all things Southampton. So if you want a little bit of a lowdown on Saints, I've given you a pretty good one here. But TikTok, do give me a follow. I do a bit of other content as well. I've just done a little review on the David Beckham documentary as well. So always creating good football content.
Great. I was asking similar questions last year because, of course, we had the World Cup coming up. But now that I've got 2 questions or 2 sort of things. Now that we've qualified for Germany in 2024, well, firstly, I'd like to say, isn't Bellingham really good?
Oh, he's unbelievable. I put a tweet on my Twitter account last night. I just think he's an outstanding talent. What a player. I thought he was just a different level of midfielder last night. He just blossomed.
Oh, yeah.
And he's getting better. He's playing one of the best sides in the world, but we're so lucky to have a talent like that. Who would have said 2 years ago that we'd have a player like Bellingham in our side?
I just find it crazy that, of course, they're all brilliant footballers, but he just seems to be so much better than everyone else, perhaps maybe except Kane. But just for a midfielder, he's extremely skillful as well. He's doing twists and turns that you'd expect a winger to do. It's very exciting.
We have some very, very good players. And you look at you look at what he's got at his disposal. It's quite incredible, really. I still find it bizarre. I could go on a rant about it all day, but I still find it bizarre with some of the players that are picked. Calvin Phillips last night, very lucky not to get sent off.
Horrible.
Really, and that was just due to not playing football. You cannot go into a European Championships next year with players that are not playing football because it will cost you against the best sides in the biggest games.
Yeah, I think Phillips is probably a good player, and I'd be happy for him to be playing in the team, but he just doesn't ever play for Man City. It's like Southgate gives him England games to build up his fitness, which won't matter because he's never needed for Man City because they've got lots of midfielders, and they signed Nunes as well this year, so he's not even going to get in. And then the second thing, is it coming home next year?
I think they've got a really good chance. Really good chance. I'd be surprised if we didn't win it, actually.
I'd like to hear that. Surprised if we don't win. Oh, we've won it already. You're on it's coming home bandwagon. I mean, I'll agree with that. It's coming home
we've
till it
come
doesn't.
So close so many times, haven't we? And I think now is our time. Now is our time.
Yeah, if we just are able to avoid France and Germany and Italy and Spain and the Netherlands, then we've probably got a chance. If we don't have to play any of them, I think we'll win. or Iceland.
Yeah, or Iceland. Yeah, France are a good side. Italy are not the side they once were, are they?
No. Of course, we've beaten them.
Yeah, we beat them. Yeah, I was surprised at Italy in the England game last night. Very surprised, but yeah, I think we've got some wonderful players.
Yeah.
What a chance!
Okay. Great. Well, it's nice to end
Brilliant.
the episode on a high. So, Martin, thanks for coming on. And we'll be back on Sunday. And thanks to everyone who's subscribed and liked, retweeted, and commented tonight. So, thanks again. And we'll see you next week.